Hello to all of you moms out there. This is episode 15 of the Solve for Mom podcast. I'm your host, Anoki Kapasi. I think most of you are on board with wanting to grow your individuality. But what that means to each of us is going to vary. That could be that you want to work on your personal growth, or maybe getting back to some hobbies. Perhaps you want to spend time on that spark of curiosity and see if that turns into a full-fledged passion project. Maybe you'd like to address the issue of self-care and wanting some downtime or alone time. Whatever it may be, the harder part is making the time in our busy schedules for ourselves. Well, today I'm going to show you exactly what you're losing your time to. And I'm going to make it worth your time to listen to this episode because I'm also going to hand you the solutions. Welcome to the Solve for Mom podcast. Do you love spending family time together every day but realize that your own interests have fallen to the wayside? Do you have a long list of things you wish to learn but you're so tired from trying to balance it all on your own and frustrated from not planning ahead to make it happen? Have you been mom for so long that you've lost track of who you are as an individual? Hi, I'm Anoki. I'm a PhD biomedical researcher, homeschooling mom, and life coach. I too poured myself into being a mom and thought I had to stop doing the things that I love to do. I was struggling to make time for myself, had lost my sense of direction, and kept second-guessing myself. I wanted to take back control of my purpose and passions. But I kept telling myself there'll be plenty of time for that later. Until I did what was natural to me. Using the methods of a scientist, I created plans to prioritize my values, organize my time, and take action towards my goals. If you're ready to go questing for your purpose, level up your learning, and confidently pursue your passions while still being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this complex equation we call life, it's time to sharpen our pencils and our minds and solve for mom. Before we start, I want to make sure that you tap the follow button in the spirit of today's episode's theme. By subscribing to the show, it'll appear on your playlist automatically every week and you'll save yourself a lot of time instead of hunting down the episodes. Okay, now back to the show. Since your time is limited, you want to be sure that you're mostly spending it on things that matter the most to you. That means you got to ask yourself, what do you value and who do you value? What would you like to achieve? What are your goals? And you got to be discerning about what's important and urgent or a high priority. But many times what happens is that we're making these choices without even realizing it. We don't apply necessarily critical thinking to every decision we're making. We make these choices every day without considering how those choices are going to impact us. And sometimes these choices are really small and they seem innocuous. But remember, even small choices can have a cumulative effect, right? For example, if my son were to take $1 out of his piggy bank every day, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but eventually he's not going to have any money in his piggy bank. Here's an example in my life. We have this very narrow storage closet. It's the most accessible one, so we try to be strategic about how we organize it and what we keep in there. My husband put in these storage racks, and I use bins and things like that to keep the room organized. I even, in true Anoki style, put in labels all over so that I'm grouping items based on their function. You also probably know that I hate having a messy house, and so one of the things I battle all the time is clutter. So one of my habits is just whenever I walk around the house and I see clutter, I just remove it. What I do is I dump the clutter into a bag and then shove it into that storage closet. It doesn't seem like a big deal. In fact, it seems like a great solution because now our living spaces are clear and the clutter's not in view. I'll pick up a book here, a few markers there, holiday decorations today piled up, or maybe a stack of yesterday's mail. Before I know it, it's a huge mess. Each small decision to place an object in there and not in its proper place means that I'm wasting time hunting for things because, of course, they're never in their labeled bins. And it's really hard to walk around in the closet with all the overflow on the floor. And sometimes it even takes me days to find the thing. Now talk about inefficiency. So what ends up happening is that every summer I have to spend a week clearing out that closet and reorganizing the bins and reinforcing the label. I'm wasting time every time I need an item in there, and I'm wasting time then to reorganize in the summer. Wouldn't it be easier to just put away the stuff from the get-go where it belongs? So like I said, small decisions can all add up. But other times, we make choices that lead to a complete shift or systematic change in our lives. Here's an example of that. My eldest son is a voracious reader. Like in second grade, he was already reading middle school level books. And aside from having to monitor, the content of his books, given that he's so young, we really kind of embraced this appetite that he had for reading. I mean, that's natural. What parent wouldn't? What we also did was we would let my son go to bed later and later every night thinking, oh, he's reading in bed. What a great activity. But then before we knew it, our entire week would run differently. My kid would go to bed late. That meant that our homeschool would start late, which meant that we had less energy later in the day for sports or in the middle of the week even. And then on the weekends, when we really love doing family outings and it's really all about family time, we end up wanting to veg the whole weekend because we're so exhausted and want to catch up on our rest. This one small decision, which we actually thought we were doing a good thing, was actually really impacting our coveted family time. So now I'm going to ask you to take a good hard look at 5 places in your life that could use some discernment. And I think you might actually be surprised by some of the solutions I offer. First up is, are your devices owning you? I know that's a strong statement, but I actually think it's so true for many of us. For me, my phone in particular feels like the bane of my existence. I don't even know why I look at it half the time. I don't even use social media, believe it or not, and I still manage to find reasons to look at my phone. So I just can't even imagine what it's like to have all those pings and dings coming through from all your various accounts. Social media platforms in particular are designed to keep us on, right? They need us for our attention and our data. So they use all kinds of tactics to keep us on, right? They gamify things. They remove the opportunity, the power of pause, so that you are scrolling and clicking even before you can decide to stop. And they play right into the feedback loop of our natural dopamine responses. So it's no surprise that we want to be on our devices more and check out what's going on and who's doing what. So in exchange for our attention and our data, we are giving up some other things, including our time. We are losing time with the aimless scrolling. And every time we feed in information, that is used almost against us because then they're like, oh, you like this? Well, then check out these 10 other things. We're also trading in our real connections for virtual connections. We're outsourcing our brains and telling these devices to tell us what to think. And sometimes, which can be very problematic in teenagers and vulnerable developing brains, we're losing our emotions to these devices. These are all very dangerous ways to be interacting with technology. There also is a very healthy way to have a relationship with your devices. What we want to be doing is using technology to better our lives. Technology is supposed to be working for us. We use it, not the other way around. So it's time for you to face the hard truth and ask yourself, who's using who when it comes to our screens? And you might think you need it. Like I often think, oh my goodness, I have to keep my phone next to me because I have to be available for emails and addressing things, especially because I'm a remote worker. Or I say, what if I get an emergency text? But the solution is the same as with any other addiction. The first approach is to take a screen detox, which sounds very extreme, and there's so many ways to do this, but you could also start very small scale. Like one of the things I do is I have a specific spot on every floor in our house where I can keep my phone. I don't drag it around with me, but it's also in a location where I could hear a ring or a text and access it if I needed to, but it's not front of mind because I don't have it right next to me. I also put my phone in airplane mode when I really need to focus or when I'm sleeping. Recently, we canceled our cable at home. Partially, it was a cost decision, sure, but I also did it in an effort to commit myself to working in the evenings, which is when I do all my consulting work. And as a family, we have made it an absolute rule that there are no phones at mealtime. For us, dinner time is family time. Now, these are examples of things that I have done. Some of them may work for you, some of them won't. You'll have to audit and decide what's problematic for you and what degree of correction you want to make. But what I want to impress upon you is that you are going to be surprised by how much time you're going to get back if you do this. The next thing is, are you dealing with clutter creep? I call it that because disorganization really does creep up on you. This is exactly what my story about the closet was all about. And I don't know where I heard this. I've heard it so many times in my life, but I think it's so true. So when it comes to clutter, and that's that the state of our house is a reflection of the state of our mind. So do you want to be confused and overwhelmed and scattered? I think we'd all answer that question as no. So when it comes to clutter, but many other things as well, we have to adopt a disciplined mindset where we don't put something off for later that we could just get done now. So the solution to this, of course, is planning. Planning is going to help you be so much more organized. You're going to be able to create systems and workflows for capturing all that clutter. So to do this, you have to set aside time to organize, and you need to have the discipline then to stick with the plan. Whatever system you create, you got to stick with it. And of course, it really helps to get support from the rest of your family. So I'll give you some examples of what I do in my home. So remember I said I walk around the house and I'm constantly picking up clutter and basically transferring the big mess to some other place that's out of sight. Imagine asking your kids to clean their room and they take everything from all over their bedroom and shove it into whatever closet they have. I was basically doing the mom version of that. But what I've been doing lately is I keep a bag, like a tote bag. But honestly, even a grocery bag could work. And when I'm walking around collecting all the clutter, I just put it in this bag. And then at the end of the day, I do one last kind of clean sweep around the house. I go ahead and take everything in that bag and put it away in its proper place. Now that bag, because I do it every day, is not usually full. And it is so much easier to do with this partially filled bag than to wait till the summer and do a whole closet full of cleaning. And of course, I get my kids involved. They are responsible for very specific things. They have to put their clothes away. They always have to put their toys away. When they take out a game, they have to put it away before they move on to the next thing. I get their help to clean the kitchen every night. And they're also learning where the kitchen items go. By having a system to put away your things and garnering support from those that live in the house with you, especially teaching your kids those life skills, is going to really save you so much time. And remember, all these small choices do add up. Your good choices, like teaching your kids the skills to clean, also add up. It doesn't seem like a big thing to teach them to put their shoes away, but then all of a sudden, they're putting their shoes away and their coats away and they're doing the laundry for you. And at least that's what we're working towards in our house. So the next thing I want you to assess is, do you have your priorities straight? I know it's a big one. The thing is that you're losing time by doing things that don't matter to you. You can't treat everything in your life as having equal importance. It's just unreasonable. Again, here, you got to show some discernment. I think the best way to do this is life planning. If you want an overview of what life planning is, go check out episode 8. I'm linking it in the show notes so it's easy to find. So if you're caught up on what life planning is, you're going to know that a life plan is really going to help you find purpose. And even if you do have an idea of what your purpose is, you really may not still be living intentionally. But with the life plan, you're going to have the clarity on your vision. I want you to be able to know things like what your life is going to look like a year from now, 10 years from now, or even further out, such as when you're a grandmother. What kind of life do you want? How cool would that be if we're lucky enough to be one? At the risk of sounding crazy, what about when you're at your deathbed? I am not trying to be morbid here, but how empowering is it to know that you can make decisions today that will play into that very important time in your life? Just like me several years ago, do you want to wake up and realize that life is just happening to you? Or do you want to have a say in your own life? You can make your life be what you want it to be. And your key to that is a life plan. It is going to be such a vital decision-making tool for you. You can use it to do all those things I just talked about and to set goals. You can use it then to forecast, and very importantly for today, you will be able to prioritize your time. Why? Because you're only going to be spending time on the things that align with your life plan and that are important to you and bring you value, and you're going to cut out the things that don't fit with this life plan of yours. The fourth thing I would like to say is it's okay to be picky. But let me clarify. It's okay to be picky about your time. This one really goes right along with knowing your priorities. This is where you decide like what you're going to say yes or no to. Now, there definitely is a time in life where having a propensity to say yes can serve you really well. Right now, as a busy mom, we have to be more discerning, there's that word again, about what we say yes to. And the reason is because you're taking care of your family, so you can't afford to just overcommit yourself. If you want you and your family to be a priority, you've got to decide what things you're going to say yes to in order to help. We've been raised to believe that saying no isn't polite. I kind of see this differently, and I hope you do too after this. I've talked before about when you say yes to something, you're also saying no to something else, but the opposite is true as well. When you say no, that no is a vote for something else in your life, specifically having time for something else in your life. Here's an example that we're all pretty used to. We can be selective about what we eat. When I say no to junk food or sugary treats in our home, for example, I'm also saying yes to natural and unprocessed whole foods. Let's do the same thing for our time. Let's get the junk food version of our time out of our lives. Because I no longer say yes to everything and to everyone in my life like I used to, I have saved so much time for myself and my family and trusted friends. How do you do this? Well, the solution is to set boundaries on what you're willing to say yes to. Again, that's going to be different for each of us. To help you, you can ask yourself, is this activity providing me value? How long is this going to take? And will this affect the rhythm and flow of my day? Okay, let's say you decide from all of that it's not something you really want to say yes to. Then you have to determine, is it something you can just say no outright to? And if I do, what's the downside? And if it has to get done, is it something that you could delegate? Is there someone else maybe that's equipped to do this or that can be trained to do it? In my house, every time I hear delegate, I automatically think, ding, 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 kids. In this way, you're basically intentionally running a short-term benefit risk assessment on your decisions. This is really what I do all the time in scientific consulting when I'm managing a medical product safety project. For each decision, you're trying to understand what are the consequences of saying yes and what are the consequences of saying no, and figuring out which version outweighs the other in terms of benefit. And in doing so, you're placing your time with the things that are the most meaningful and highest priority, which then means that you're saving yourself a lot of time. And the last thing I want you to think about is whether you are cultivating relationships or just collecting friends. Having a ton of friends isn't really enough. Of course, you want to have friends, but what you really want to be doing is building strong relationships. So don't get me wrong, we moms need to have friends. That's true. Friendships are important for our mental well-being, but as you know, not all friendships are the same. So I'm asking you to be, again, a bit more discerning about who you pour your time into. Is that relationship that you're building worth taking time away from important people in your life like yourself or your family? We want to try to build a village or tribe or community, whatever you want to call it. And we need to fill this village with people who bring us value. We don't just want to fill it with random people. Basically, we're trying to curate and cultivate these strong relationships. And to some degree, they're probably people who are aligned in our values as well. Doing this is going to do way more for you than being popular and having a lot of friends. So you got to ask yourself, does this friend share the same values as me? And I want to be clear, it's okay to have friends that have differing views than you, right? You don't want every friend to be this cookie cutter version of yourself that thinks and does things exactly like you do. We don't always have to agree with each other. You can still be friends. In fact, some of my most valuable friends are people that push me and test me, and we work well together, but also have a healthy level of disagreement. But I'm talking about things like, are you spending time in friendships that are going to provide an ROI? You are investing all the social capital and time, and we don't always do things just to expect something in return. Remember, we're taking time away from other parts of our lives and other people to pour into this friendship. And I'm not suggesting that your friendships all be reduced down to this sort of transactional filter, but it is important to know if a friendship is not serving you in some other way. I found that some of the friendships in my life that had been a time suck, in retrospect, also ended up taking other things away from me, like my emotions and my energy. And don't forget, you can get value in so many ways. Having a moral presence in your life. Your friends can be role models. Among my good friends, I am constantly admiring all these beautiful things that they've done with their families and that they've accomplished in their lives. It makes me want to be a better person. Your friends can be a source of emotional and mental support. And I also have friends that offer logistical support. Now that seems kind of like a superficial thing, but having friends that are willing to drop everything and maybe drive your kids to this activity that you just can't get to today, that can be of immense value in your life. The friendships you want to turn into strong relationships are with the type of people that when you walk away, you feel that was really time well spent. And don't forget, of course, before you reach the strong relationship level, you do start with somebody being an acquaintance or a basic friend, and then that blossoms into a stronger friendship. And so it might be surprising, but if you fill your village with friendships that are worth investing your social capital and time, and you set stronger boundaries around the friends that don't bring you as much value, I'm not saying just drop people out of your life left and right, but you're going to find that the time you are spending with people, especially being stricter about who you spend your time with, is going to be much more fruitful, and you're going to gain a bunch more time. And there you have it. Those are 5 reasons that you might not have a lot of time. And remember, I gave you solutions for each of them as well. So those are 1, if you're spending too much time on your devices, then set boundaries and maybe do a screen detox. And 2, let's stop clutter creep. You create a decluttering plan, then have the discipline to stick with it, and if you need to, involve your kids as well. The 3rd thing is not being intentional about your time. Here, life planning and using the life plan to prioritize your time is going to be key. 4, stop saying yes to everything. Create boundaries by aligning your time and value and see if anything can be delegated. Get comfortable with saying no. And remember what you're saying yes to in exchange when you say no. And the 5th thing is cultivate rather than collect friendships. Emphasize your time on meaningful relationships and understand the value, both the abstract and the tangible, that each friendship brings you. And then de-emphasize the people who seem to be wasting your time. So you might be surprised that I asked you to say no more or to delegate things to your kids. Even if they're 3 years old, they can help. And maybe you're even shocked that I asked you to be discerning about your friendships. And I did say all of that, and I'm not going to apologize, because I really do think when you face the hard truth about some of this stuff and you implement my solutions, you're going to gain so much more time. I know this because I've done this. One way to approach the information from this episode is to just pick one thing. Work on that one strategy. See how much time it brings back to you. I want you to enjoy that newfound time and put it towards some of your favorite things that you like to do for yourself. And when you feel like you're on a roll with that, then go back, pick something else on the list. So save this episode and then you can work on each of the things one at a time. Okay, guys, sometimes it can feel like we're drowning in our responsibilities as a busy mom. And then, of course, we have busy families to go along with it. But with some planning and discernment, you can win back your time. I promise you. So I'm going to be here every week and help you get back to feeling more like yourself again. I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe and tell other ambitious mamas about it. Who knows, you might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. Thank you for making my show a part of your day. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Solve for Mom podcast with Anoki Kapasi.